Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today I've got Shruti with me today, and we're going to talk about empathy and empathy in marketing. I think it's a real top subject for the world in which we live in today. So before we get into that, Shruti, where can people find you?
Hi all, thank you very much, Tim. People can find me on Twitter at Shruti12D. That's the best place where I live.
Okay, you're a big Twitter person, aren't you?
I love it, absolutely love it. Love the interactions there. I must say, I love the authenticity of the channel and how fast it moves. So ideal for marketeers like me.
And I mean, you are on LinkedIn, but you tend to be more of a Twitter person.
Absolutely. So I am very much on LinkedIn. I'm also contactable by Gmail, but LinkedIn is obviously far more professional, and I tend to use it only when I'm writing kind of big pieces. With regards to more frequent conversations and community, I'm on Twitter.
Cool. So, COVID-19, it's made a massive change to the way that we live, the way that we buy. I know certainly, we're both based in the UK, and there's been various lockdowns. How do you see the marketplace, and what changes have you seen take place in various buyer and what the buyers are doing?
So I think that's an interesting question. We can say we've gone back a little bit, but also a lot of bits have changed. As we know, since March last year, most businesses have had to undertake desperate measures to align with government mandates. We've seen, right from stay at home to restricted movement across populations, restricted travel, limited travel. Businesses have had to make a lot of changes with the way things operated. They have had to adapt to their workforce working remotely. Pandemic has only confirmed, in spite of so many restrictions, that remote working or being away physically from a workplace is not necessarily all bad. If anything, it has facilitated flexibility and probably focus in some cases. I do believe that with proper planning and robust reporting frameworks, working remotely and being away from a physical workplace has increased productivity. But all of this has obviously also changed marketing. And the big question for us as marketeers is what has changed with regards to the marketing landscape, and how can we continue to increase the return of investment in all the tactics that we do. So some of the changes that I can see, I've observed, is businesses are directing more investments that prompt more online sales. They're shifting focus from far more premium products to much more entry point necessary products and services. Marketing teams are also holding on to their budgets. It's a bit like, let's keep some stash of our budget away, especially for channels like events and conferences and seminars, because that is one channel that is still evolving. Also, marketeers are having to really fine-tune their media allocations by tactics. The costs for media channels are varying with demand and supply, and with the demand changing so drastically across channels, that's something that marketeers are having to focus on. Also, it's becoming more and more critical to build fast response mechanisms to deliver a far better customer experience. We have seen throughout the pandemic that businesses that have stayed in touch with their customers have come back on their queries fast. May not be correctly, even posting a reply saying, "We'll get back to you as soon as possible," has really contributed in improving the experience the end customer gets. So these are some of the changes that I'm observing with COVID.
And I think people are now starting to understand that people have moved online.
Yes.
I mean, before the pandemic, there seemed to be this thing that you had to be in the office because that's the only way that people would get work done.
Absolutely.
Now I think that people actually understand the flexibility. For example, I'm going to do a day's work. We've also had a tile around to lay a tile in the kitchen and stuff like that. And you you just manage it around with what you do.
Absolutely.
And I think that people actually enjoy that flexibility. And I don't know about you, but the last thing I want to do is have another travel an hour into London on a train full of germs and then go in an office just to go on Zoom meetings where I can do that at home.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been huge. We do. Some part of it is coming back, as we've seen. Tim, in the UK, people are returning back to offices. London's opening up, but I'm completely with you on that. Why would I travel an hour plus in a closed up, underground tube to be in an office again with a bunch of people who are traveling from various locations? And I'm not sure, whether the ventilation's working, the virus has gone away, the sanitation, all of that is still a big question mark. If I can do that remotely, why not? Considering I'm productive, I'm focused and flexible, getting the job done, that's the most important part.
So how does empathy come into this? We know that the world's changed. We know that people are now online more. So what can rather, let's not get into what should be doing, but how does empathy come into this?
So I think as marketeers, it is far more important for us to adapt to what our customers really need. And through the pandemic, during and now, even if it's been a good 18, 20 months, we've realized that our customer behavioral patterns have really changed. And hence, it's important for us to quickly adapt by embedding the right tactics that nurture our audience and continue, to get them closer and moving further into the funnel, so to say, and really adapt to what they need. And one of the best ways to do that is with empathy. Now, when I say empathy, it's I would like to quote Noah Fenn, who says, despite all the data, empathy is still the greatest tool in a marketeer's toolbox. And that's exactly, what it means. Empathy is all about stepping into your customer's shoes, truly understanding your customer's needs and being genuine in your marketing. It will absolutely build authentic connections. Hard sell will really not cut it, definitely not in this day and age. And empathy often, seems to be immeasurable, but it does have immense value to customers. Building on an emotional connect with your customers, I think definitely goes a long, long way in building that trust, the credibility, and most importantly, the loyalty in the long run for businesses today.
Why do you think that people still do hard sell then, when so much data and research shows that well, I'm not saying it doesn't work. It doesn't work as well as being empathetic.
I think this was one of the tactics that was found out earlier on, where businesses started thinking, oh, everybody's home. Everybody's either Netflixing or everybody's, just sitting at home and lounging in their pajamas. Let's just hard sell. And I think this is really a misconception, because that's not what people are doing. Hard selling may seem like it's working in the beginning, because of course you start probably getting the numbers through, but at some point you need to stop and see whether it is the numbers and the quantity of leads or prospects coming in through these tactics that's important, or whether when you really look closely, it's the quality. And personally, as a marketeer, I mean, I have found that in my day job, I am a campaign manager, and my a large part of my work is understanding where my prospects are, what my leads behave like, and setting up tactics to get them engaged, nurture them, and make sure they kind of engage with the assets and content that I put out. It is, there are tactics which often are used to make sure that we get the huge number in. Just recently, I had a campaign that went live about a couple of months ago, and I had about 500 plus leads go into the funnel. And bear in mind, I'm in B2B. So the sales cycles are ridiculously long, as long as 18 to 24 months at least. Yeah. And out of those 500 plus leads, how many of them are really engaging with the content, the assets that I'm putting out? Oh, I would absolutely come down to less than 100. And that's where I think people think that to start with, it's important to get the quantity in, and then at some point they'll nurture and convert, maybe 1 in 20. But that's where I think people think that hard sell would probably work. But really it doesn't, because if someone was not interested in buying the product and service that you have up for offer, they never really will.
So you've got 5 tips for marketers to consider before launching marketing campaigns, haven't you? Especially around with empathy. So why don't we just walk through those? So
Absolutely.
what's your number one?
So my number one is, going back to what I said at the beginning, understand your audience. Let's stop guessing as marketeers and really let's start understanding. Let's gather enough human insight about the customers that you're building, that you're building up for your business. One of the best ways to do that is to simply ask. And I think
Talk to them.
marketeers tend to just complicate.
Yeah.
Your prospects and your customers are at your fingertips. Just ask. There are surveys, there are polls. You could put out information and people will genuinely respond.
They do.
It is fundamental to understand your customer's need at every point in your marketing campaign. There was a report by Untesting, and that showed about 95% of purchasing decisions are given by emotions. And about 60% of loyal customers use emotional language to describe their favorite brands. And that says a lot about the fact that what is it that the customers or prospects use before even engaging with you as a business. As part of really understanding your customers, I would suggest collect key data points at each stage of your buyer journey. People tend to always try to understand a customer journey, but before they become a customer, it's really important to understand how's your buyer coming through. Are they, what are their certain behavioral patterns? Why are they not filling up a contact form? Do they need more information before they register for your webinar? Things like that, even before they take any action. It's important to understand what triggers these certain actions. And that's what further results in the prospect moving further into the funnel. It's important to have conversations, listen to your customers and prospects, as well as speak to them in order to map out what their patterns, behavioral patterns are. This will not only allow you to develop assets and content, but also kind of put together engaging content out, which will keep your customers and prospects coming back. Like I said, in something like in the B2B industry, these are long sales cycle. They may not stick the first time, the second time, but if we are engaging them the right way, depending on how their behavior has changed, they will certainly start engaging and we can nurture them further. So I think, data is a great tool to understand and gain qualitative and quantitative analytics. But I would also like to say that's not all. It's really important, like I said earlier, to understand what their behavior is. We are not here to just sell, as I said. It's important to understand what they behave like and engage them in a way that will lead them to make the decision that we want them to make. One of the things I would really like to point out as really an example that came out most recently,
Yes.
during the pandemic, where one of the companies really used empathetic marketing. There's a shoe retailer, Allbirds, and they decided, well, as I said, shoe retailer, so they sell shoes. But they decided to really show empathy by prompting their customers to buy a pair, but along with that, also donate a pair to the overworked healthcare professionals. Allbirds really made it easy to allow their prospects and customers to donate shoes, whether or not they chose to buy one for themselves. They really introduced multiple ways to donate, to people that they want to, especially within the healthcare industry. And that really allowed customers to choose what, when, and how much they would like to donate as part of their buying circle. So I think that really brought out,
Great example.
empathy by this particular company.
Mm.
So that was my first point.
Yes.
Sorry, I'll let you.
So what's number 2?
So number 2 for me is gather competitive intelligence. Analyze your competitors' strengths and weaknesses. What has worked for them? What hasn't? Sometimes it's really important as business owners to remember we can't be everywhere all the time, and there isn't any need really, to reinvent the wheel. Save your time, save your effort. Watch what your competitors are doing. It might just give us far more insight into the market trends, and simply customize what is needed for your particular customer persona and execute. So don't reinvent the wheel. Just gather intelligence and just fine tune it for your audience. Thirdly, again,
yes.
coming back from COVID, always have a plan B.
I think this is crucial nowadays.
Absolutely. I mean, how many of us at the end of 2019, myself certainly, was making big plans, big campaigns, putting, while diversifying a little bit, still hanging on to the traditional tactics that I've always used, in the hope that, it's going to work again. And what has the pandemic proven? Those who adapt faster and are flexible in execution are the only ones who will evolve and meet the changing marketing needs. So don't depend on one big campaign. You certainly need a plan B to fall back on. Remember to curate content and tweak your assets that are already in place. I think the mantra, create once and use more, certainly ensures us marketers to be in a far stronger position and execute campaigns quickly, especially if the scope changes drastically, like it did from March 2020. Fourth on my list was cut down funnel marketing activities. Now, what I mean by that is, judging from your customer behavior, check if your prospects down the funnel especially are ready for conversion. If your audiences are dealing with bigger crises or major disruptions, they really may not respond to your sales conversion tactics, offers and discounts, or any other direct marketing end of funnel conversion tactics. Also, that's not the right time. At that point, make sure that you don't leave them high and dry. Continue to nurture. They may not be ready to buy just yet, but give them a reason to keep you in mind. Nurture their intent, give them some reassuring marketing, and just make sure that you're always there to help, not to sell. And this is exactly where I feel showing empathy will go a long way at this stage, rather than hard sell or pushing people to convert. So that was the fourth.
And the fifth?
The last one of the 5 for me was, and a big one again, is humanize your brand and be visible. Audiences, while they adjust to the new norms, while new patterns of behavior set in, it's important to make sure that you're not out of sight, out of mind. It's important to be heard, to be seen, and be seen with a baseline message in the market in a more human way. It's important to be less formal. With the way the world is changing, make sure that you show people that there are real people as part of your business behind this brand. Something that resonates with me really is sharing customer stories, but in a fun way. It certainly portrays that as a business, we are far more approachable, we are far more, enjoyable, and we're really people with the real emotions. Make sure that you show with real world examples, build that trust and credibility. It's also important to personalize, because that goes a long way. People like to have their name, like to have their preferences noted and mentioned as and when it comes through. So really bring out the human side of your business. It's just important to remember that ultimately we are dealing with people, and it will help to build better engagement if we really bring out the human side while dealing with prospects and customers.
We've had a couple of comments from. Thank you. We've had a couple of comments from Manfred, which I'm going to bring up because I think they really, they back up what you said. I've not been ignoring you, Manfred. I wanted to make sure that Shruti was got her 5 points over. But I totally listen and speak to the audience, map out their actions. This one here is backs up with what you said, which is about always having a plan B. I totally agree with that. Those adapt faster and flexible are the ones that evolve to meet the changing market needs. I totally agree with that. I've not read this one yet, so we can't be everywhere all the time. It isn't need to reinvent the wheel. Save your time and effort. Watch your competitor doing far more insight. Yes. Oh, we're on a roll now. Create content and tweak your assets that are already in place.
Yeah.
And check if your prospects down the front of your especially are ready conversion. Thanks, Manfred.
Absolutely. Thank you, Manfred. Absolutely. I mean, I've used these tactics and tools in my day-to-day marketing, and especially I would like to quote a time. I think this was May 2020, and things were just on a roll with all of this COVID, and what people can do and cannot do, how can businesses interact and cannot interact with their customers, and the big question was, how are we going to get these leads in and get these prospects rolling in? We had assets and content ready, which spoke, now that I think about it, in a very different language. And rather than completely dumping those assets, what was important is, remember what the goal was of the campaign. Remember, what are we trying to achieve? At the same time, humanize the message. At the same time, tweak the language in your assets in a way that it's far more empathetic, far more understandable in the current scenario where things are changing drastically with crisis happening from one country to the other. But at the same time, just reusing the assets that I had, and I was able to change the direction of the campaign far more quickly by just curating content rather than having my head in my hands and beginning to create new content from scratch, where I'm already late to get campaigns out of the door by a couple of weeks. So I will not forget those long evenings where it was important to get stuff out, but just reworking on stuff that we already have made such a big deal, and really optimized around what we had, really gave us far more positive attitude to, right, let's roll with what we have. The recipients are human and they know where we're coming from. No one's going to put a finger on, oh, you've had a typo here or you've had a mistake there. As they say, world's a stage. It's a matter of getting your stuff out and not wait for perfection. And I think pandemic has really shown that we are all human at the end of the day. So let's roll with what we've got.
So do you think that consumers will return to their old habits, or do you think we've changed for good?
I think we have changed. I think it's going to be a combination. We have changed slightly for the good. And I do think that consumers will not return to their old habits. I think a hybrid behavior that combines pre-pandemic experiences and post-pandemic expectations is definitely here to stay. It's certainly critical to keep a close eye on, what analytics are coming through to make an informed decision with regards to what scenarios are going to come in front of us. But I certainly do think that people are holding on to the amazing experiences they've had pre-pandemic, but at the same time, they do understand what has changed through the last 18, 20 months, that their expectations have slightly altered. So it's going to be a hybrid expectation from the market.
Okay. Shruti, thank you so much for coming on today. We are at 23 minutes, so the time goes so quickly. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
You can get me on Twitter at Shruti12D. And Tim, thank you ever so much for this wonderful opportunity.
You're welcome.
It's lovely to be on the panel with you.
You're welcome, and thank you for Manfred for all of his comments. It's been excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the insight today. Thanks, Shruti. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.